I'm Ted Santos, and tonight we are back. YouTube gave me about a 1 week vacation because they didn't like some things I did with movies, wanting to show guys masculinity on the big screen. So they shut me down for a bit. Got shut down on Facebook also at the same time. So I'm back, YouTube and chill, and we are, as you know, we always talk about the most intimate parts of relationships. We love talking about sex, intimacy, things that make relationships feel good or make them go crazy. And tonight we are going to address something. We are going to address something that most women don't want to touch. Many women, maybe even most, don't want to touch it. It is that topic of microchimerism. Maybe the real, maybe another topic for this show could be, were men and women created equally? That's an ugly conversation to have. Were we created equally? And lots of women have been told they can do everything a man can do. They haven't factored in the biology, the biochemistry, neurochemistry. None of that has been addressed. They were just told everything a man can do, you can do. As you see, I was in the gym, showing a little bit of legs, no legs today. But I'm still in my fashionable sport jacket. How's everyone doing this evening? Yeah, I actually just came back from the gym. So last Friday I wasn't around. Not that I didn't want to be, but YouTube didn't allow me. Imperator. I'll lose my channel for this one, huh? So maybe this is the topic women keep avoiding. And every time men bring it up, they have all kinds of lines. Not every woman, you know, we heard it all. They try to give us exceptions to the rule. So, you know, I like to do that screen share. I'm going to share some screen, and we're going to look at the papers, not just articles. What are the medical professionals saying about this? Microchimerism. And so so this is about sex. You know, YouTube and chill is always about sex. So we're going to get down into some intimacy of what happens with the female body. And you know what's interesting? I first learned about this from a woman. She was in grad school, getting a master's in biology. And she told me the doctors first learned about this. It was really an accident, delivering a baby. And they found DNA that wasn't the mother's, it wasn't the baby's, it wasn't the father's. So they were like, who does this belong to? So it was an accidental discovery. Pay a fee, huh? Well, here's maybe the real joke is, the joke is on women. They're actually paying for this. They're paying the price. Absolutely, Imperator. I think I would say we haven't even scratched the surface on what sex can do. We haven't scratched the surface about sex, the benefits, what it provides. I mean, just think, an entirely new life. And we're going to talk about that too. If you guys saw me last night with, I did Red Pill Rican and The Fix for New York. You may know him as Cash. the three of us teamed up and did a really good show. So I addressed some things that I would say we need to look at legally. We need to redefine who actually creates life. And yes, Imperator, ancients knew about this. Your grandmother and great grandmother, they were saying, hey, don't you be out there running the streets sleeping with all those men. They've been telling them for centuries, don't do it. And all of a sudden in the 60s, women said, if men can do it, we can do it. Yep, Imperator, they knew it. Exactly. Don't let those stray dogs in. And what do women do now? They lay down with the strays. They lay them down and then say, men are horrible. Okay, I'll drop the links. I will share, screen share, and I will pull up some things that that lay this out. You know, we like talking about sex, so we're always talking about laying something out. So let's do a so we don't have to depend on what Ted says. And you know, they have TED Talks, so why not? Ted says, I am Ted. They do TED Talks all over the world, and I am Ted. We're gonna do a TED Talk tonight. So let's do a quick screen share and see what they say microchimerism is. It's a short video, 4 minutes long. Let's hear the doctors talk about it.
Hi, I'm Randy Nesse from the Arizona State University Center for Evolution Medicine, and my guest today is Lee Nelson from University of Washington. She has actually been a practicing physician, a professor of medicine, and she also has a laboratory at the Hutchinson Research Institute. Welcome. She's here today to give a talk about microchimerism, which turns out to have all kinds of interesting ramifications. What is it? What is microchimerism?
So microchimerism is, the word derives from the chimera, which was a mythological creature that was part lion and part goat and part serpent. Micro just means small, and so it's a small amount of cells or DNA that came from a genetically disparate individual. So that's what the term means in medicine.
So a baby's cells that continue to circulate in the mother after birth.
Yes, or cells of origin in the baby, because those cells probably age. So if it's 10 years later.
Wait, 10 years later? The cells can still be in the mother 10 years later?
They can, 10, 20, 30, really? Probably indefinitely, yes.
Well, do they just live, or do they divide in the mother, or what?
Well, people don't really know exactly what they do, but you have to kind of assume that stem cells pass over, because you can detect these cells in all kinds of different cell populations decades later.
So how was this discovered?
Well, the first report, and the person that really put this in the presence of the scientific and public eye, was Diana Bianchi's in 1996, where she described long-term persistence of male cells that were progenitor cells in women that had given birth to sons.
So I bet she looked under the microscope and thought, those are male cells, it must be a mistake. And then?
We'd have to ask her that. I didn't ask her that specific question, but I know she had a very hard time getting the paper published.
Really?
She had.
Everybody said it's impossible.
Yeah.
Typical for big discoveries.
Yeah.
You've been working on this for a long time now.
Yes.
How did you get into it?
And well, we kind of described the other side of it. We asked the question whether mother cells persist in everyone else. And this had been studied, interestingly, in immune deficiency, but no one had asked the control question. What about non-immune deficient people? Do mother cells persist?
So how many of us have our mother cells still circulating in us?
It's probably universal, but we can't say that scientifically because at the limit of our ability to detect in humans, we don't detect it in everybody.
So what kind of cells are these? All cells in the body or just certain blood cells?
Well, that was the next part of the story that was really interesting. I think in the beginning, people thought, well, these must be interloper cells. They must be circulating blood cells. But in fact, what Ann Stevens showed, she's a pediatric rheumatologist who looked in the hearts of some babies that had a syndrome called neonatal lupus. And she found that most of the mother cells that were in those babies' hearts were actually cardiac myocytes. They were muscle cells. So clearly these cells, can adopt the phenotype of a lot of different tissues. They can be a liver cell, they can be a beating heart cell, they can be a renal tubular cell, they can be a variety of different epithelial cells.
So these cells from the mother go into the baby and turn into actual tissues?
It looks that way, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Imperator, that's the thing that women are struggling with. Lots of women try to use the Bible and talk about they want their Boaz, or they want certain kinds of man, a king, and all these things. And as you said, the king doesn't want his children coming through a woman who's been ran through. So maybe they've been attempting to tell women this through the Bible about women being virtuous. Only one person is responsible for protecting a woman's womb. It is the one who owns the womb. And if you're letting anyone in it, well, you ran through, used up, and you could be carrying the cells of other men who then become part of your next generation. And most guys are not looking for that. I understand some guys don't care. So what are the other things that I found here? So that video was to hear what the medical professionals say. So we're going to do some quick we're going to look at some quick things that Google said. So does sperm go to your brain? The new study, he says, indicates that NGF in male sperm actually travels through the female bloodstream to the brain, causing her hypothalamus and pituitary gland to release the hormones required for pregnancy. Now that's interesting. Does sperm affect a woman's DNA? No, women do not absorb and retain DNA from every man they have sex with. Several websites published false stories this week on a new study that supported to show women retain and carry living DNA from every man whom they've had sexual intercourse. How long can you get DNA from sperm? DNA profiles from laundered semen stains recovered at least 8 months after deposition micrograms of DNA and full DNA profiles recovered, irrespective of wash conditions. No significant decline in DNA quantity and profile after multiple wash. Wow, so the DNA stayed even after you washed it. Interesting. What is microchimerism? Is defined as the presence of two genetically distinct cell populations in the same individual. It can arise from several causes, including the bidirectional transfer of cells between mother and fetus during pregnancy, twin-to-twin transfer in utero, from organ transplantation to blood transfusion. Okay, so one of the things that is often stated is that women have the cells from their child, the son, the boy that was in their womb. So what does it say about male microchimerism in women without sons? Quantitative assessment and correlation with pregnancy history. It says fetal microchimerism derived from, and I took this from ResearchGate. Catherine Guthrie. It looks like, right. Zen-Yen, Natalie Lambert, Catherine Guthrie, Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, University of Washington, Allison Porter. So you have some doctors here. This was published September 5th, 2005 in the American Journal of Medicine. And here's an abstract. Fetal microchimerism derived from fetal cells that persist after pregnancy is usually evaluated by tests for male microchimerism in women who gave birth to sons. We investigated male microchimerism in women without sons and examined correlation with prior pregnancy history. Immunologic consequences of microchimerism are unknown. We studied healthy women and women with rheumatoid arthritis, Y chromosome-specific real-time quantitative polymerase chain reaction was used to test peripheral blood mononuclear cells of 120 women, 49 healthy, 71 with RNA. Results were expressed as a number of male cells that would be equivalent to the total amount of DNA detected with a sample containing the equivalent of 100,000 female cells. Now here's the thing. Now they're doing a study on women who have never had male sons. They were not pregnant with boys. And what they say, this is a study published in 2005, the American Journal of Medicine. And what they found was male microchimerism was found in 20% of women overall. So they did find it in women. So when women say that, well, it can just be from your son, here's a study that says they found it in women who never had sons. And they accounted for many things. So they say women were categorized in 4 groups according to pregnancy history. Group A had only daughters. Group B had spontaneous abortions. Group C had induced abortions, and Group D were null gravid. Male microchimerism prevalence was significantly greater in Group C than other groups. 8%, 22%, 57%, and 10% respectively. Okay, so in Group C was What did they say group C was? 4 groups. Group A, B, C. So group C had induced abortions. That was the greatest. So even women without abortions and never had and only had daughters, they still had microchimerism. And they say male microchimerism was not infrequent in women without sons. So they still found. So and I'm only showing this for all the ladies who say, well, it could be from a a past pregnancy of a boy, and they found microchimerism in women who only had sons. The movie Species. Yes. And even the movie Alien, where the alien picks you and drops his seed in you and you're just a host for it. Maybe that's the way we should be looking at women, as a host. So what else? And I'm sure no one wants to hear those words. You're my host. So here's today I found out. This is a website. I'll drop the link. And then today I found out, this is fairly recent, about a year old, February 24th, 2020. And they are asking a question. Is it true women retain the DNA of every man they've ever slept with in their bodies? David Hiskey, and there are a few comments here, huh? It's quite a bit. So let's get to the point. If you've spent virtually any time on the interwebs, and particularly lurked on the social media areas of the marvel of human ingenuity, you'll no doubt at one point or another come across the fact that many women have living male cells hanging out in their bodies, including in their brains. The most common explanation, according to social media, for how these instances of microchimerism came to be is that women acquire these cells via making the beast with two backs with a man. Via making the beast with two backs with a man. The claim that often follows is that given these cells and their replicates have been shown to sometimes hang around for decades in women, that most women have the DNA of every male sexual partner they've ever had in their bodies. But is that true? Is that actually true? So he asks a question. So how do these cells get there? And where did the rumor that women retain DNA of every man they ever slept with start? To begin with, back in 2012, a study titled Male Microchimerism noted that after dissecting a number of deceased women's brains, 63% of brains that's 37 out of 59, had male microchimerism present, while it was touted by many, a media source, that this was a huge discovery. In fact, it has long been known that a large percentage of women eventually carry living male cell lines in their bodies. So this is, you guys were saying this isn't new news. For example, a study in 1969 published the Lancet showed that 70%, 21 of 30 pregnant women, 19 of whom were pregnant with boys and 2 others having previously had boys, were found to have male microchimerism. And so from there, countless other studies showing the same thing, including some animal studies that showed some of these cell lines were able to cross the blood-brain barrier in mice. What made this spectacular 2012 study interesting was simply that it was the first to show that these cell lines could cross the blood-brain barrier in humans too. So they've known about this for a while. They definitely saw it in mice. And they're saying, well, now they're seeing that it happens in humans too. Well, Imperator, I think women actually want to avoid this topic, and they'll explain it away. They'll say, well, that's just from a twin that died, or, and they say it could be that, or they say, they just deny it. They deflect, or they say, well, that she had a son, or she had an abortion of a boy and it remained in them. Chaos for you. What's going on? Women think. Too busy feeling. So, so this is interesting. It says that it's also interesting to note from the study that 33 of the women had Alzheimer's, and that these women had lower likelihood of having male microchimerism present. And even those who had Alzheimer's and male microchimerism, they tended to have lower concentrations of these cells. More on this and the potential benefits. Okay. Okay. So he says, researchers assumed that the most likely answer, so this is them finding male DNA in a woman's brain. And it says that researchers assumed that the most likely answer was that all male DNA found living in the female brain came from a male pregnancy. That was the safe, politically correct assumption. But these researchers were living in denial. The scientists didn't know what the hell was going on. Confused, they did their best to hide the evidence until they could understand and explain it. They buried it in numerous sub-studies and articles. But if you sift through them, all you will find the damning statement, the one line that gives the game away. And here's the one line. This one line that gives the game away is from a 2005 study, Male Microchimerism in Women Without Sons. That's a study we just looked at. In this study, they found that 21% of the 120 women they looked at had male microchimerism. Of these women, 26 of them had daughters, 23 had spontaneous abortions, 23 had induced abortions, 48 of them had never been pregnant. Check this out. 48 of them had never been pregnant that the women were aware of. This is the thing that women won't talk about. 48 of those women who had male DNA in their brain, 48 were never pregnant. This is the thing that he's saying gets buried. The results were the first group who only had daughters had only 8% rate of male microchimerism. The second group with spontaneous abortions had a rate of 22%. The third group with induced abortions had a rate of 57%. And the final group who'd never been pregnant were at just 10%, smaller, similar to the group who'd only had daughters. So a lot of this is getting dismissed. I mean, what is this? Are we getting the feminists who are saying, let's bury this? Because how can you continue to tell women they can do whatever men can do? I'll drop this link in the description. Actually, yeah, I'll drop it in the description. So let's see. So there's all kinds of back and forth debates denying it. They said there was also a claim that we'll get to, but before that, so he's saying there's another claim he wants to get to, and he said before he gets that, given the information has a grain of truth, is claimed to be backed by scientific study, which a few are going to bother to read, is mildly plausible on the surface, or at least not readily debunkable by the layman without looking into it a little, and is incredibly eye-catching in headline form. It naturally spread throughout the various social media outlets whose algorithms and platforms cater to content with no depth or nuance, like Facebook and Twitter. What's going on, Sydney? We're talking about we're talking about microchimerism in the ladies. What happens? The undiscussable topic. Okay, so yeah, they're talking about how the cells can stay in a woman for decades from the child. So no one's denying that the cells of the child can be in there. Except remember, in this study, and I read you guys the abstract from it, 48% of women who were never ever pregnant, 48% of the women in the study were never had babies, and 10% of them had microchimerism. They had male DNA in their brains. Okay, so they wanted to, I guess they're attempting to debunk it. So here's another study in 2015. Illustrating all this, we have such research as 2015 study Microchimerism of Male Origin in a cohort of Danish girls, looking at 154 girls 10 to 15 years old. Unfortunately, for adding a more definitive data point to the question at hand, the researchers did not ask the girls if they had sex before. Though given their age, it can be presumed that the majority had not. Delving into this, the researchers note that in a separate study, it was shown that approximately 16% of the 14-year-old girls in Denmark have had sex, and a total of 36% had done so by 15. Importantly, however, 80% of these 14 or 15-year-old girls who had sex reported their partner used a condom, which limits the possibility of such cell transfer. So 80% had used condoms. In any event, the results of the study in 10 to 15-year-old girls showed that 13.6% of the girls tested positive for male microchimerism, which is more or less in line with a previously mentioned study that of adult women who'd either only had daughters or never been pregnant, with rates of about 8 to 10% respectively. This almost exactly lined up with another study on pubescent girls, with about 14% testing positive for male microchimerism in the study. Now this is interesting. So they took girls in their findings. So this is interesting. So the plot thickens here. Red Pill Mike, what's going on? Thanks for joining. Talking about male microchimerism in the ladies, we're looking at male DNA found in a woman's brain. So this imperator, when you're talking about kings who want a woman with a clean womb. So guys, I'm going to get into some more here, perhaps some insights that are rarely ever discussed. Click the like button as you're sitting here, smash that thumbs up, share this with men and women. Women especially need to hear this. Excuse me, chomping down on a few lentils. This is my, as a vegetarian, this is my source of protein. I had a decent workout in the gym, so. So this says, as other studies have also shown, the 2015 study researchers also noted that girls who had older brothers were more likely to test positive for male microchimerism. With more older brothers, the more likely to test positive. They also found girls whose mothers had blood transfusions during pregnancy were more likely to test positive as well. Given this data set, however, the researchers do note that they could not account for all the instances of male microchimerism based on the known data, and thus further research is needed to figure out where all these cell lines are coming from more definitively. So that's something else to think about, right? So making children with a woman who has already had boys can influence that. So boys from another man, those cells are still going to be inside of her. Interesting chaos view that Marx was married. Very interesting. By G. Tunez. Thanks for joining. Talking about microchimerism and the male DNA found in women, their brains, their bodies. I showed a video that talked about how the cells of someone else can be just gets embedded in part of the cells in your body. It could be the liver, the heart, the lungs. So a woman who is a single mother, you impregnate her, and the cells of those other children, especially boys, can be in your children. Right, and and it's still in some places, it's you disgrace your family if you've slept with someone else. It's like they can't get rid of you. How do they? No one wants you. No one wants a contaminated uterus. So they're saying to date, it isn't actually fully clear what is happening here to these unaccounted for cases. The leading hypothesis is that these are probably coming from things like cases of a vanished or unobserved male twin, or more likely in most cases, a woman, including the mothers of these girls, having been previously pregnant with a boy and they simply didn't know it. It turns out, depending on what study you go with, between 1/3 and just under a half of all human pregnancies result in miscarriage, with a decent percentage of these happening without the woman actually knowing she was briefly pregnant. Further, a large percentage of the rest of these miscarriages happen before the sex of the baby is known. That said, given researchers have not yet definitively been able to account for all these sources of male microchimerism, it's always possible it could be from a sex partner, and more research is needed to figure this out definitively. But at present, this is deemed unlikely. Why? It turns out it's a massive conspiracy backed by the lizard people. Okay. Okay. So he's saying not all women, heterosexual women, test male for microchimerism. So they're saying the vagina is not very hospitable to outside anything coming into it. It gets rid of it. So they're saying that, and this, I guess, this is a source a lot of women will use to say that there's no proof. They're not sure, so they're putting it off because they say they can't prove it definitely. And that's interesting because I spoke with the first person I learned about microchimerism is a woman getting her master's degree in biology, and she said that they found cells of DNA of someone else, and it didn't belong to the mother, not to the baby, didn't belong to the husband, and they found that it matched previous sex partners. So I don't know, maybe they're trying to say those are just anomalies. I mean, this woman who has her MBA, her master's in biology, from her studies, she seems to have no doubt, like zero doubt about this. So here's a line that someone used in there. He's debunking this guy. He said, the guy, Dr. Baxter, said sperm is alive. It is living cells. When it is injected into you, it swims and swims until it crashes headlong into a wall. And then it attaches and burrows into your flesh. If it's in your mouth, it swims and climbs into your nasal passages, inner ear, and beyond your eyes. Then it digs in, it enters your bloodstream and collects in your brain and spine. Like something out of a sci-fi movie, it becomes part of you and you can't get rid of it. So that's for all the ladies who swallow. He's saying it's alive. It has intelligence, and it will move the way it chooses. It will bury itself inside of you and travel in your bloodstream. Okay, so this article does not like the idea. It's inconclusive. Inconclusive. He says, and while research may someday show that it can potentially happen in some very isolated cases, though again, among other factors, the woman's immune system makes it implausible. The body of evidence to date definitely shows it can't be common, else by the twilight years of most heterosexual women's lives, there would be an almost 100% rate of male microchimerism, even in women who'd never had older brothers nor been pregnant with boys themselves. Okay, so I guess I didn't share a screen on this one. Sorry about that, guys. I thought I was sharing the screen. I was doing sorry, I forgot to hit screen share. I was looking at this article here. It's today I found out, feed your brain. Is it true women retain the DNA of every man they've ever slept with in their bodies? So this guy doesn't like the idea that they're saying a man's DNA is found in a woman. He's debunking a Dr. Baxter for talking about how sperm is alive. And this is probably the source. This is probably one article a lot of women will use to debunk it, except there's no proof. The article can't prove that microchimerism or the DNA from a man and a woman had sex with. The article does not prove that. It doesn't. So I'll share screen for, let's see. It says, oh, I think I have to go back to that. So let's look at another article. Oh, you know what? There's a paper. Let me see this paper. There it is. That's the one I want. That's the one. Okay. NIH, the National Library of Medicine. So this is a paper. I mean, they do a lot of research here, an enormous amount. I'll drop the link for this also. The National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information. So the title on this is Male Microchimerism in Women Without Sons, Quantitative Assessment and Correlation with Pregnancy History. The abstract, and this is August of 2005. Quite a few doctors listed on this. It looks like many of the same on the other one. Okay, so here's the abstract. Purpose. Fetal microchimerism derived from fetal cells that persist after pregnancy is usually evaluated by a test for male microchimerism in women who gave birth to sons. We investigated male microchimerism in women without sons and examined correlation with prior pregnancy history. Immunologic consequences of microchimerism are unknown. We studied healthy women and women with rheumatoid arthritis. So here were the results. This is kind of the same thing I read to you before. 21% they found it in women. Their conclusion, male microchimerism was not infrequent in women without sons besides known pregnancies. Other possible sources of male microchimerism include unrecognized spontaneous abortion, vanished male twin, blah, blah, blah. So this is interesting. So the medical profession, the scientific profession are at odds with one another. No one wants to say yes or no. There is this, I'm not sure yet. No one is willing to concede. So no one wants to be wrong. Yet they've been telling women for centuries about sleeping with a bunch of men. That's very interesting. So I'll look at this last article. Science says, Davis Science, UC, what is this, University of California, UC Davis. Nevertheless, foreign DNA persisted. This is November 29th, 2017. Daniel Ritchie. Having unprotected sex can have legitimate consequences. If you're a female, you may get pregnant. And no matter your biological sex, you are at risk of numerous sexual both of these, okay. So it's saying all the ways you can have microchimerism. You don't need to absorb from a twin. It could be a blood transfusion, bone marrow transplant. If you donated blood, it's going through someone else's. Another way is through pregnancy. Interesting. So no one wants to really fully address this. Okay. So they're attempting to also say that women with rheumatoid arthritis could be getting fecal material that circulates in the mother's bloodstream. Interesting. So they're saying fecal material from the child could circulate into the woman, and that if it's a male child, that DNA could be spread throughout her body. Very interesting. So this is the stuff that I guess women use to debunk it. Interesting. See, what no one is willing to say that it doesn't happen. They're just drawing hypotheses, trying to debunk it, and these are only theories. Very interesting. So no one has been able to prove that the DNA from another man's sperm, no one's proved that it does not happen. But they keep creating more and more theories and doing studies attempting to prove that it has nothing to do with your previous sexual partners, except no one has been able to prove that microchimerism from another man, from a previous lover, they haven't proved that that does not happen. And I find that interesting because this has been going on since the 90s is when they first discovered this. So we're talking like, what was it, 95, they said? So we're looking at 25 years, and they have not been able to prove it doesn't come from another man. But they're attempting to debunk it for some reason, and I'm not sure why the medical profession is so against this. I guess there's a fear that they've lied to women and told them they can do whatever a man can do. I mean, this is very, very interesting. That they're working, you have the scientific community working hard to attempt to debunk it, except no one has been able to do it. All they do is come up with another theory and another theory, and they do another study to try and prove that it's not happening. Except they've already tested women who were never pregnant and still had it. Women who only had daughters, no sons, they still had another man's DNA in them. And yet they say, no, it can't be. Now, how is this possible? no one has actually proved that another man's DNA isn't in a woman. They can only prove that another man's DNA is in a woman. So I know that sounded like crazy. They're trying to say that the only way a woman gets a male DNA is from a twin that died inside of her. She was pregnant with a male and never knew it. So just listen to these theories that they're coming up with where they can't actually prove it. They're telling you that 10 to 50% of women get pregnant and the child aborts and a woman never even knows she was pregnant. There's another percentage who get pregnant and the abortion happens before they know the sex of the fetus. So no one wants to actually say, look, you have sex with different men, the DNA stays inside of you. They're looking to come up with all these theories to debunk it. So I find it interesting that they prefer to keep misleading women and girls. So I guess if you've told a lie, so there's something called confirmation bias where you only look for things that prove what you already know and you discard everything else. That's very dangerous. All right, they say that the guy Bernie Madoff, who ran a Ponzi scheme for billions of dollars, took lots of people's money, disappeared, and the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) they looked at him, except they had a bias saying that he's got to be a great guy and he could never be doing anything wrong. He did all these great things in his past, and they ignored him. And turns out he was a scammer. He was a criminal, a thief. It's like when people get a certain bias and then we get this cognitive dissonance where they just can't accept it. And I find it very interesting that we're finding cognitive dissonance and we're finding this confirmation bias that they only want to find evidence to prove, to be able to debunk it, except they haven't been able to debunk one single thing. All they've done is come up with theory after theory. And I read some of the articles that were attempting to debunk it, except no one has credibly proved that women don't have their previous lover's DNA in them. I mean, they've shown that they've shown that, as I said already, women who never had a son and women who were never pregnant still had DNA from another man in them. And they're trying to find some other way that could have happened. And I guess then you'll never have to be responsible for lying to girls and women and saying that they can do whatever men can do. And I think, what did you say that, Kate? It would debunk the whole men and women are the same, right? So then they'd have to deal with this. You can no longer say men and women are equal. Now, chaos for you, that's an interesting one. Hey, see, Imperator, right? So if this is proved, a lot of women will be abandoned. See, if you start teaching men that a woman with a contaminated uterus has no value to you because whether she had children with another man, or she had abortions, or just been with a bunch of men, and you want to have children with her, this is a huge risk, because what they are showing also is that children will carry the cells of another child. So they're finding that in cases. And it's also taking the mother also. So see, this is really a crazy situation. It is shown that this whole notion of women being pure, they talked about virtuous and pure women. Her uterus being clean, being pure, so that when you lay your seed in her, it grows in a clean, optimal environment. See, this would bring a whole new meaning to the word toxic. Now imagine a woman who's had 50 plus lovers, and half of those 50 men didn't use condoms. And then a percentage of them dropped their seeds in her, and that DNA is still in there. See, then now that's a woman with a very toxic uterus. She's going to have conflicting DNA of different men. And see, perhaps, guys, I'm going to make I'm going to offer a perspective that men need to be thinking about when engaging a woman sexually. And we should start looking at how we can turn the biology and science into law. So, they say it's a miracle for a woman to get pregnant. Well, technically, we understand what happens during pregnancy. So it's not a miracle. A miracle is something that's unknown. We can't even explain it. And the miracle is if me or you as a man, if we unload all of our sperm into women, in just a matter of hours, just a couple of days, we reload. The info is scaring me. What does that mean? So we can replenish our sperm, and there's no clear understanding as to how we can do that. How our sperm, where it comes from, how our body is able to produce more sperm, because that is life. And men, mammals, we're amazing because a tree can only produce seeds certain times of the year, and that's it. It has limits. We can reproduce seeds anytime throughout our lives, any day of the week. Even if we unload it all and empty out, we shoot our whole wad and have nothing left, we're going to replenish our supply. And we don't understand how men do that. And that's where life starts. It starts in us, in our testicles. And when we drop our seed in a woman, the sperm is what carries our DNA, and it carries intelligence. It finds the egg, it fertilizes it. Once it fertilizes it, the woman does nothing. The woman is like a host. The sperm creates the placenta, the fluid, it does everything. The woman is, when she feeds herself, the sperm eats what she eats. And then that sperm turns into a fetus and a child. So technically, legally, because it is us dropping life into her, that life should technically be the property of a man. So in the event a woman takes your sperm from a condom and puts it inside of her, that should be considered theft. That's a woman stealing your seed, unauthorized apprehension or acquisition of your life without your permission. And even a woman who has sex with a 13-year-old boy and then sues for child support when he's 18, she took advantage of a minor in stealing his seed. See, we as men need to look at our seed being life and a source of life. See, technically, a woman is not doing as much as we thought. She's not creating life. Life is being put in her, and it's using her in the same way a seed uses the earth to grow. The earth doesn't create the seed. It just creates a place for it to grow. If men can start looking at it that way, few things will happen. One is you don't drop your seed into any woman, especially if she has a toxic uterus and she has the DNA of a lot of different men in it. That is not a pure and clean environment for your children to grow in. Two, when you talk about child support, child custody, if we can say, hey, legally and scientifically, men own life because we produce it. A woman is a host. And in that host, our children grow. So we have the right to say what she can and cannot eat and the activities she engages in. Right. So chaos for you women, they run out of eggs. That's it. They're done. We keep creating more seeds, and science doesn't understand it. So when we speak of microchimerism, right? That is finding the DNA of someone other than the woman. They have not proved that microchimerism happens inside of men. The only way they find it in men is if a woman has had sex with other guys. Then you'll find this DNA, the cells of that other man in your son. And it can take the form of cells in his heart, in his lungs, his liver. They find it everywhere in his brain. So now I'm going to put out a theory. Imagine a woman having sex with a bunch of different men, whether she swallows or takes it in her vagina. And she has conflicting DNA of different men that swim up to her brain. How is that going to affect her emotional or intellectual, mental stability? See, these are things men need to look at. Science says that a woman who has sex with more than 5 men, like starting at number 6, when a woman has sex with 6 different men, she is 3 times less likely to be in an emotionally stable relationship. So you can ask a woman, so technically, especially if you're looking at marriage, you have the right to know if a woman has been with other men. She used condoms 100% of the time. Men have come inside of her. She's been pregnant. She had abortions. You have a right to know this, especially if you want to plant your seed in her, because you don't want to plant seeds in a toxic environment. Now, our medical profession doesn't want to, it's like you're saying, they tend to disregard nature. Our scientific community does not want to admit this. They're doing their best to try and find all kinds of theories so they don't have to admit it. I mean, look, scientifically, we've been through this before. Back in 1400s, when Copernicus said, hey, look, the planets don't all go around the Earth. They go around the sun, including the Earth. We all go around the sun. The Vatican, the church, executed him for heresy. The whole scientific astronomy community said he was a lunatic. And they discarded what he said. And so here we are, 600 years later, 700 years later, and we're dealing with the same thing all over again. And see, this is why when people say human beings have evolved and transformed, yet we're dealing with the same problems. When people present facts, you have a proportion of the community that wants to go in denial because it could invalidate so many things and so many narratives that they've put out there like they are true. So that means they have to back off. So imagine in Copernicus's time, the whole scientific community, the most intelligent professors in the best colleges like Oxford, they're all saying, hey, all the planets go around planet Earth. They have a vested interest in keeping that lie going, because otherwise they look stupid. So they did everything to keep the lie going, even though it affected their ability to accurately tell time, because they couldn't calculate the accurate motions of planets. Except they kept the lie going. Even though Copernicus is sitting down and saying, look, I've done the calculations, here's how it works. They murder this guy. So they keep the lie going. And then Galileo, 40 years after Copernicus was murdered, Galileo comes out and says the same thing. And finally they listen. So how long do we have to go before women can know that they're creating toxic uteruses? And they talk about their worth. Well, if their beauty and their body and their uterus, and I had a woman in grad school, she was majoring in something like biostatistical engineering or something, who you would think she was intelligent, but she said the thing that a woman has that every man wants, the number one value a woman offers is her uterus, is what she said to me. So if that is a woman's number one value to a man, you would think that women would be intelligent enough to know to keep their uterus clean, to keep it pure, to not listen to what the feminists said when they said, you can do what men do and have sex with as many men as you want. And you can just go get an abortion if it doesn't work, if you don't want the pregnancy. So we're finding microchimerism, so that we now have to keep the lie going, because if we say that the DNA of your past lovers are in you, now we have to address the other lie that was said, that you can sleep with anyone. So we tell lies, or we create theories to hide lies we said or to protect lies. Exotic Sugar Bear, how you doing? The Robstagram, what's going on? Big 125, good to see you in the house, man. Exotic Sugar Bear, thank you. You understand what I'm saying. See, this is the concern. Every time they do research and find, and I read studies, actual studies, that papers, the abstracts that said women who never had girls, women who never were pregnant, those women had the DNA from a male inside of them. And there are medical professionals saying, well, that could have been something else. What if she was pregnant and didn't know it? What if she had twins? They're given all this stuff to protect the lie. But you have to start thinking, what's in the best interest of society? It's Gidget. Oh, hey, what's going on? The Exotic Sugar Bear. How are you? Thanks for joining. I know you have a son. I know you do. And what we're talking about is not a pretty thing for the ears of women. But men have a right to know what's been inside of a woman's uterus, so that way they can make a decision on how they want to move forward with a woman. They shouldn't be denied that right to know. So let's stop saying it's not happening when there's enough proof and evidence to support that microchimerism is happening. And let's stop telling the ladies they can sleep with as many men as they want. All right, as I said, when she gets to guy number 6, it starts to affect her emotional stability. And there's a book called Hooked, where a male and female gynecologist wrote a book about how there's this bond break pattern. When a woman has sex with a guy, her oxytocin secretes, she bonds, and then she breaks off the relationship and she breaks. And she does that enough times, it starts to cause emotional trauma to the brain. You start to create a defective brain if you do that, and you're traumatized. And a guy has the right to know how many men a woman has slept with, because her emotional instability can show up towards him. He ends up with a divorce that makes no sense. And her emotional instability can affect the child. She could be emotionally abusive. So as men, you have the right to know these things. Imperator, that's a good question, right? So if a woman is a prostitute, guys were not looking to marry that woman. Like, we look historically, guys were not looking to marry the prostitute. It's only recently that we try to say, hey, don't shame the whore, don't shame the prostitute. She's valuable too. But her uterus is toxic. I mean, you want to talk about toxicity, man. It's like some chemical oil, the nuclear Chernobyl. It's like she's got an oil spill, or the nuclear power plant spill in her, and that land is toxic. Everyone spilled something inside of her. So, what are you guys' thoughts on this? I'll drop the links for the articles I've read in that one video that I showed. I'll drop them in the description so you guys can check them yourself. But it's actually good also to see the doctors who attempt to debunk it. Not one of them can debunk it. Zero have any proof to debunk that it happens. Yeah, the plausible deniability. That's the country that we've become. And yeah, I don't even want to get on other subjects of guys being falsely accused. That's a whole different conversation. But hey, like I'm back. YouTube smashed me. They gave me I thought it was a 2-week vacation. It looks like it was only 1 week. They let me back on. They had a problem with me showing those movies, and I really do want to be able to show you guys these movies because they hold a lot of valuable nuggets in showing how masculinity was portrayed at some point. Hey, exotic sugar bear, yes, they do need to listen to this. They need to hear the facts, because we keep telling young girls they can do what men do, and they don't understand the consequences and how men will choose. And they you have these women, you hear this guy Kevin Samuels telling women that, hey, you want a high value man. Well, do you understand what he wants? And men are being shamed for wanting a woman who hasn't slept around with a lot of different guys, or has children from a lot of different men. I mean, we're being told that we are being unfair and we should give her a chance and we can help make her a better woman. Like, why should we have that responsibility? How does that benefit us? I mean, that's a babysitting job. I mean, how many women are going to sit down and shut up and hear what you have to say and learn? Like, there are a lot of women who do not know how to learn. And as we lay these facts out from studies and research, how many women actually want to hear the facts? I got the ban hammer. Yeah, they shut me down. Yeah, man, for a week. So I really do want to show. So listen, the movie that they shut me down is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If you haven't watched it, and I really wanted to narrate, interject the things that you see. It's a great movie. It's a classic. And man, talk about red pill. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was like red pill all the way, man. It was hardcore red pill. And it was the battle between red pill and feminism. But I don't want to get into that here. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth it. I think it was made in 1975, which is kind of the beginning of the women's rights and feminism taking a hard, upward turn. So guys, if you haven't smashed the like button on this one, smash it. If you haven't shared it already, share it. And if you haven't commented, comment. If you're not subscribed to my channel, smash that bell over there in that corner you see, and subscribe to my channel. I will be smarter about making sure I don't get banned and shut down for a week again. I had pretty good momentum, and I was posting some good things. So anyway, I always appreciate your feedback and feedback. Interesting. Yeah, there's plenty of evidence said that she was involved with them. Google chaos for you. Google timeline of women of the KKK. Google that timeline of the women of the KKK, and you will see a history of the women of the KKK going back to the 1860s, man. Very interesting. It's a document that's about I think 120 pages long or something. But if you haven't read it, it's worth reading. I'm pretty sure it's timeline of women of the KKK. So hey guys, I'm going to get out of here. Hope you enjoyed this one. I know everyone watching this is already aware of this, but it's also good to see what the women are using to try and debunk it. And they technically, no doctor has debunked it. They're just creating more theories to be in denial. And as men, we have a right to choose a woman who has the uterus that we deem to be worthy of planting our seeds in. You don't want to plant your seeds in a toxic environment. You know, I mentioned Chernobyl. You don't want to go farm in Chernobyl where they had a meltdown of a nuclear power plant. So any woman who's had a meltdown with her uterus and allowed everyone to go in there and just drop toxic seeds in there, you don't want her. So, hey guys, thanks a lot. Love your support. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Share this video, and look for me on Sunday. I'll be talking about something with Straight Talk. Until then, guys, have a great weekend. Thank you for joining me on Instagram. Always love your support, and share this. I will save it in Instagram. And if they block that for any reason, you can find this on YouTube. You can share that one. So have a great weekend, everyone. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.